Welcome back to the Good Leadership Breakfast. Today is our 118th meeting and kicks off the spring series. Extraordinary times since we last shared space together in this room back in November. And I can tell you, I am very excited to be here this morning. I've very much been looking forward to getting together, having this positive energy and celebrating goodness and celebrating the things that are good in this world. And I'm so grateful for all of you to be here this morning too. My name is Julie McDonough. I'm Market President for Old National Bank here in Minnesota and a longtime friend and co-host of the Good Leadership Breakfast. Now I'd like to turn your attention to the screen for a commercial from our presenting sponsor, Old National Bank.
Let's be real. Money doesn't come with instructions. A coach has a playbook, an architect has a blueprint, a journey has a roadmap. But your finances, where are they going? That's where private wealth management at Old National comes in. Imagine having a personal wealth advisor and a dedicated private banker who actually get you. Not just order takers managing your money, but an experienced team working with you to build a roadmap. Private wealth management at Old National. Let's create a roadmap for your financial future.
All right, and now I'd like to welcome to the stage Shadi Alamar, CEO of Old National Bank Wealth Management. Shadi.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Good morning. That was not energetic. Good morning. There you go. There you go. It's good to be here. The weather is turning warmer, so there's a lot to like. But today, I was reflecting on the way here about all the noise we hear out there, all the media, all the divisive stuff that pulls us apart. So I know people, including my wife, who give up like social media during Lent, right? I gave up social media a while back. I only have LinkedIn, and honestly, it freed me because what happened every morning, I was pull up like most of you, right? Look at Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And by the time I'm done and I'm driving to work, I'm already mad. I'm mad about something, right? Somebody said something, and then I stopped reading it, literally. So today, I think goodness is a big topic, and it's an important topic for us as a community to come together. So at Old National, that's what we focus on. It's that goodness of people, goodness of business, goodness of making sure that the community thrives. We're here, as you know, we entered this market 7 years ago. Recently, we partnered with Bremer, so Bremer is now part of Old National. So some of you have been driving around or by your neighborhood, you've seen the conversion of Bremer to Old National. So we're here for the long run, but most importantly, we're here for the community. And we're here to do good, to make sure that we are all thriving together economically. And that's why we align ourselves with this goodness message. So thank you for being here, and let's have a great day.
Great. Thank you, Shadi. I am certainly proud to be part of Old National as well and practicing good leadership and accountability every single day. I also want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, Java House. Big round of applause for them. Great. Thank you for the delicious beverages this morning and for the pods for everyone. Okay, and we're going to dive right in this morning. I'd like you to join me in welcoming to the stage the CEO of Good Leadership and the founder and creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast, Paul Botts.
Thank you. Thank you. Today is the start of the 17th season of the Good Leadership Breakfast. Yeah, we never imagined it would get this far. We started this conversation on a dark winter morning in January of 2010. So if you remember the context then, our lives were really heavy then. The Great Recession, what had to do with the banking crisis, was a lot more difficult to run an enterprise even than COVID. There were many, many people losing their jobs every day. I would get these LinkedIn requests every single day from people saying, yeah, I lost my job and trying to figure out what to do. So when we got everybody together in January 2010, there was about 70 people in the room, and we discussed this question: do you still believe goodness pays? So did anybody think that 2026 would start out the way it did? Yeah, I'm still trying to form my words that I can use in public to talk about all of this. And instead of actually finding those words, what I've done is think really hard about what is our point of view as a firm, as an organizational effectiveness firm who works with a lot of CEOs and a lot of fantastic organizations. And what I've decided to do is this. So if you'll notice, I am standing right smack dab in the middle of this stage. And I'm doing that for a reason. Because when we started this thing 17 years ago, my wife and I were business partners. And what was fascinating is when we had the courage to talk about goodness, it was magnetic and super fun. And also, people from here and here, way out on both sides, came to me and told me that their version and what I could and should do with that concept of goodness. The fact of the matter is, nobody can claim goodness. It's a plural concept. Goodness is when people thrive together. I would say, come together, work together, in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. And this concept has really fueled how we think about things. From day one, I have always tried really hard, and I've succeeded at staying away from any kind of political thinking when we do our work with our clients. It's actually really easy. What we do is we make sure we get the executives together and we focus. We think about what are the 3 things, we call them top 3 can't miss priorities, that are going to make sure that our strategy comes alive in ways that are competitive and healthy for everybody. So we focus. And then what we see when we do that is that people come to work on Monday morning. They come to work on Monday morning from all sorts of different walks of life, and they actually start working together on making promises and keeping those promises to their customers. It's beautiful. And from my perspective, over a 17-year time horizon, enterprises are the healthiest part of this country. Those of you who are leading a team in an organization that's focused on doing good things for customers, it's healthy. You want proof of that? Here it is. So since 2010, quality and productivity are up. In addition to that, we've done this research over and over and over again. 84% of the people who have a manager in America say, my manager makes decisions on a daily basis based on goodness. I think that's awesome. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I hope it's one of the reasons why you all come here. We've been focusing on this mission since day one. We spread goodness through good leaders because we believe goodness pays. These are sticky concepts. We're going to talk about all of them today. And one of the things I think is fascinating is since COVID, when we got our clients together to talk about where is all this going, because remember, we didn't actually think this breakfast would survive COVID. After that first shutdown, we called all of our sponsors and we literally said, do you want your money back? And they said, hell no, we don't want our money back. What we want you to do is to figure it out. So we did. We broadcast 2 months in a row from the conference room at Good Leadership with one iPhone. And at that first one we did, we had more people watching than ever attended a Good Leadership breakfast. But we were unsatisfied with the fact that the lighting was terrible, so I went to Home Depot and bought a whole bunch of lights. And the second one, we had John Thomas, who was an NBA star and a Minnesota Gopher star. I mean, the guy's like this big. And he and I sat there next to each other in front of our conference, the screen in the conference room. It was really well lit. Then we moved into a TV studio, and then a bigger TV studio. And then in November, 2 years later, we tried again. Shadi Alamar said, you know what, you gotta try, and I know a speaker that I think will really attract some people. We were hoping that 50 people would come, and there were about 120. So here we are again. This concept is sticky, and I think it's really important that we stay focused on it. But coming out of COVID, what people were focused on, our clients were, they were focused on how can we create the spirit of accountability now Now that we've got this workforce that's dispersed all over the place. Some people are working from home, some people are working from the office. We've got generational differences. We're all looking at the world differently. So we started focusing on this concept of healthy accountability. Many of you were in this room when we talked about the research around it, and we've done, I think, remarkable things. It's changed how we're approaching our client work because of this concept of healthy accountability. Typically, we would really dive into this concept today, but we're not going to do that. We're not tone deaf. We're focusing on what's going on in our world right now, and we're going to focus this meeting on the concept of healthy instead of on accountability. I hope you agree with me. This sounds like a good idea. So without further ado, I'm going to invite my friend JC to come up and lead you through what is our signature exercise. Literally, this exercise launched this firm, and I'm happy to trust you with it. Thanks. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Hey. Who's been in this room many times? Like Good Leadership Breakfast, you just kind of blink and all of a sudden you're back here again. You don't necessarily know how you got here, right? Cool, welcome back. Who's here for the first time? Awesome, welcome to the family. Yeah, give them a round of applause. It takes a certain amount of courage and curiosity to walk into a room that you've never been in before and without knowing what you're gonna find. But when you come back the next time, there'll be a couple exercises. Paul just referenced one, the 7Fs wheel, which we'll do in a second. Bucket of Goodwill will come up a little bit later. But if you've been here a lot, I'm gonna invite you to think differently today about how we do this exercise. If you've been here for the first time, I invite you to look at this exercise through the eyes of today and take it with you out in this space. But we do a lot of polling in this space because words don't mean anything until they mean something together. So the word healthy, go ahead and take out your phones. You can either use the QR code or on your table, or up on the screen here, you can type in www.slido.com, enter in that number, and then this question will pop up for you. What one word do you think is the best synonym or means the same as healthy? And yes, you can cheat if you want to hyphenate two words. You know how it goes. So as we look up on the screen, if a word was typed in more than once, it gets a little bit bigger. If a word was unique, it's a little bit smaller. But what do we see? Healthy means wellness, thriving. So thriving, that's a verb, right? Healthy is a verb. Strong, safe, balanced, robust, vital. Peace and prosperity, yes, break the rules. Use 3 words, right? Healthy is sometimes saying, here's what we need to do, which may be different than what we did yesterday. Okay, so everybody take this in. This is what we mean. This is our collective meaning of the word healthy. And now we're going to dive into the 7Fs wheel, which has been sponsored by Darren Lynch. Darren, where are you? There's Darren in the back. He's always one of the best dressed people in the room, so if you're looking for the best dressed list, just find Darren. Irish Titan has sponsored the 7Fs wheel for a long time here. The 7Fs wheel, it's a simple exercise. Simple meaning there's few moving parts. Not simple meaning easy. What you're going to do, and you can either go ahead and find it in your handouts today, or there's a QR code as well as if you want to do it on the website. What you're going to do is you're going to consider faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future in your life. And you're going to circle 7 numbers from 1 to 10. 1 being that thing could not be any worse in your life right now. 10 being that it could not be any better in your life right now. But as Paul said, for the last 2 years, we've been looking at healthy accountability, and rightfully so, the word we spent most of our time shining the spotlight on is accountability. Today, after you complete your 7Fs exercise, connect those 7 dots to create a wheel, and then we always say, would your wheel roll? And normally, there's some chuckles, it's like, nope. Or it's like, it'll roll, but it's really small. Or it's like, well, it'd roll except for this one giant flat tire moment. And then normally we would talk about from there, right? But here's 2 prompts that I invite you to have for your table discussion with your friends and your people you don't know yet. That's what I like to call strangers who are at the table with you today. Consider these 2 questions. In what ways do you see yourself as healthy on the 7Fs wheel? So robust, well, thriving. And then number 2, where do you see healthy leadership in your workplace or in the community? So you get a little conversation around you. And then since you are such an important part of the community and the workplaces that you exist in, you get some time to speak about healthy there. So we'll have a couple minutes of conversation music. Talk about your 7Fs wheel in the context of health. So you all just calibrated this moment. right? You all just were inspired and inspired others as to where you are, what you are carrying, what you're bringing into this room around this idea of your 7Fs. If I would have opened up my app and put a word up there for what healthy means to me, I would have written responsive, right? Healthy is how do we respond to the world in which we're living in to do the things that we care about, and our 7Fs is reflective of that. So one more poll question before we keep the good leadership train moving forward today. Bring your phones back out. If you left the app open, it'll simply go and populate to the next question here. But which of the 7Fs feels the healthiest for you? The key word is today. That's the timestamp. So not what should it be, but in this moment, which of the 7Fs for you feels healthiest today? As you look up at the screen, the meat thermometer is always telling us what's happening in the room. Y'all, I will tell you, the last time we were in this room, 0 people said fitness. Why? Because we live in a world that says that we are never actually doing enough in terms of our own well-being. Then all of a sudden, the world happens to us. The world watches how we respond. 13% of you said that fitness is healthy. From 0 people in the room to 13%. And on the flip, hard pill to swallow, 0 of you said fun. Makes sense. So what do? We respond to what's going on in this world. We respond to what's going on in the room. And 43% family, that sounds like this wonderful little Minnesota we get to live in, which sets up a beautiful conversation today. I'll be back in a little bit.
All right, thanks. All right, JC knows it always worries me a little to see finances so low on that slide. So if you're in that area, we know people. I got you. I'd like to welcome Lily Hartman to the stage with Marsh McLennan and thank them for their sponsorship as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Lily Hartman, and my colleague Natalie Lindberg and I are so proud to be a sponsor of Good Leadership. We work at Marsh McLennan Agency, which is a full-service insurance broker and risk management firm specializing in business insurance, employee health and benefits, retirement services, and 401k. We're actually located right here in Golden Valley, just 1 or 2 minutes down the road. Maybe once the weather warms up, we can start walking here. But yeah, MMA believes that goodness pays by being there for our clients and our communities and colleagues in the moments that matter most, and have really been proud of how our organization has been showing up this year, and just really honored to be a sponsor here. So thank you all for coming today, and thank you to the Good Leadership team, and looking forward to a great breakfast series. So thank you.
Okay, now is time for one of our favorite rituals at your local hardware store. This is called the Handy Paint Pail. Here at the Good Leadership Breakfast, we call it the Bucket of Goodwill. And this was designed by our good friends at Handy Paint Pail, Mark Bergman, so thank you for that. Here's what we're gonna ask you to do. I'm gonna ask you to practice your generosity and your aspirational thinking at the same time. I'm gonna ask you to dig deep in your pockets. Think about what a beautiful venue we are in here today, what a wonderful breakfast, great company. Dig deep, be generous, throw some cash in here. You can write a check. You can put an IOU in. You registered. We know where to find you. You can use the QR code and donate electronically if you would like. Step 2, drop your business card in the bucket. And if you didn't bring one with you today, there's cards on the table. At the end, Steve is going to draw a name out of here. We're going to ask you to come up on stage, and the winner will get to donate all of the funds raised today to the charity of their choice. And our friends at Handy Paint Pail will match that. So somebody's going to get to come up here and give a lot of money away. While you're doing that, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do it, but while you're doing it, chat with people at your table, talk about which charity you would choose and why, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
All righty, as you finish making your donations to the Bucket of Goodwill, we'll get ready to move to the highlight of today. If you've been to any of the breakfasts over the last 17 years, normally you know that now we would move into a table workshop, and we'd do some more digging in deep. But as Paul and I were talking, there's a rare air that we're all living in right now as we've chatted again and again, and to have someone like Steve here as our guest, we wanted to have as much time as possible to where Steve gets to be the mirror and the reflector. So many voices that live in our world. So we're going to spend a lot of time allowing Paul and Steve to dive into conversation. With that being said, thank you for your giving. We'll go ahead and draw a winner later on today. But right now, I'll welcome Paul back up to the stage. Paul Botts, ladies and gentlemen. Hey!
So I want to tell you a little bit about how I learned about Steve. It's a long, meandering story. I'm going to make it short. When we first started this breakfast, we did one breakfast. And when people asked us to do another one, I had no idea who I was going to ask to be a speaker. So I asked one of my friends, Tim Schmidt. He wrote the book with me about the 7 F's. It's called What Really Works. And then when we decided to do a third one, I asked my sister. And the first 3 years went exactly like that. Until we decided, maybe we have something here. And a couple people started whispering in my ear. One of them said, you're going to need sponsors to pay for this because you're not going to be able to afford it. And if you're going to have sponsors, you're going to have to communicate a lineup of speakers. So then we had to start thinking 4 months ahead. And then once it was time to renew the sponsors, we had to start thinking a year ahead. That was kind of whiplash. But over the last 13 or 14 years, this has become a very well-rehearsed thing for us. Many of you come up to me and say, hey, I got somebody you need to meet. And then sometimes we see people in the media, or a lot of times people we present here are clients of our firm, so we know them really, really well. That'll be true of Andrea Walsh when I introduced you to her in May. This one came about completely differently. I got a phone call from a recruiter when the Star Tribune was looking for their next CEO and publisher. And they asked me, who do you think could do that job? And honestly, I didn't really know anybody. And so then I reversed it and said, well, who are you guys thinking of? And they said, well, what do you think of Steve Grove? And I went, isn't he the guy that's like running deed for the governor? And the more I started thinking about it, I realized that here was this guy who had this experience that just blew my mind. You see Google and YouTube on one in the same sentence? I mean, how often does that happen around here? And then diving deeper, just learning about the courageous way they attacked the problem during COVID. Indeed, I became more and more interested. And, since I learned about commitments he and his wife had made to this community, and I thought that was amazing. And then I learned that he was working on a book. My grandmother taught me to describe books as beautiful if I liked them. This is a beautiful book. We'll send you a link in the follow-up for this, but it's called How I Found Myself in the Midwest. It's beautiful. So you can imagine we're going to talk about this today. And when we finally got a chance to talk, I reached out he has a colleague who's also named Paul, who came to me and said, hey, I think you should consider Steve Grove. And I was like, yeah, I've been researching Steve Grove, don't know him at all. We actually met for the first time in person this morning. So think about the context. 6 months ago, I said, hey, I love your book. Will you come and talk about it? A whole lot of water has gone underneath the dam since then. And we're going to talk about it. So what I want you to know is this is a beautiful family man. He's got these twins he's raising and experiencing life through. They relocated back to the Midwest for reasons he'll explain. They've started a beautiful foundation. And he's also an avid cyclist, which is really cool because he knows Ann Head, who's our speaker in April. So you know what? This thing is beautiful and how it all connects together. So please join me in welcoming a really special person, the CEO and publisher of the Star Tribune, Steve Grove.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Very kind of you. That's a nice introduction.
We talked about this ahead of time, and you've had a chance to think about it. So when you hear the words, building a culture of healthy accountability, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I think when you're in an organization and you want to do well, you want to be accountable, and your research has shown that, right? It's not as if people don't want to be held accountable in their jobs, but it's got to be something you're running towards versus something you're running away from.
Yeah.
And I think we all, as leaders in this room, I'm sure, have made the mistake of too many sticks or too few carrots. I think what your research is showing is that when you make accountability something that you celebrate and want to run towards and that you feel ownership of, it's a very different thing from feeling like you've got to meet some deadline or some edict from the top. And I think, the Strib right now is we're trying to transform an organization from, 158-year-old newspaper into a modern digital media company. If we're just scared of all the headwinds, if we're just scared of being held accountable for retaining print subscribers or doing things the way we always have, we're not going to be able to run more freely towards a digital future. So having a sense of healthy accountability, that we want to hold ourselves to a high standard, but that it's about running towards something that's good and better than where we are today, that just feels different, and it kind of gets to the culture of an organization.
Yeah, I just love that. Run more freely towards accountability. And we use the word seek accountability, but I like that better. Run more freely towards accountability. So, okay, meeting over.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
We always ask people, how did you grow up? Where and how did you grow up? And I think particularly in the context of what we're going to talk about in terms of your book and what's going on in Minneapolis, St. Paul, this matters. So where did you grow up and how?
I grew up in Northfield, Minnesota. Any Northfielders in the room? Cows, colleges, and contentment. I see a few. Great place to grow up, but I never thought I would stay in Minnesota. I think a lot of Minnesotans, I think many in this room probably have left and come back. I always wanted to go somewhere else, and so when I graduated, I did. And left for California for college, Claremont McKenna College, and then spent a couple of years abroad teaching English in Japan and spent some time in India. And then found myself back in Minnesota again, like every self-respecting 25-year-old, moved back with my parents to figure out the next step.
Happened to me a couple of times.
Yeah, It's healthy. But then started writing for the Northfield News in town as like an unpaid intern and thought that was really interesting, and ended up getting a couple of internships out on the East Coast and moving there and kind of stumbling into a career in tech. But I guess all that to say, the story of this book and a little bit of my journey is the story of a boomerang of 25 years later saying, hey, actually, what about Minnesota as a place to raise our kids? My wife and I met at Google. We were both working there. We were excited to live in the Valley. We then wanted to make a family, and it took us about 5 years. We went through a long journey with IVF. It was really kind of a hard-fought journey to build a family. And when we succeeded, we felt very deliberate about it. Okay, we have kids, we have twins. How lucky are we? Like, where do we want to raise them? And she's from San Diego, but had spent time in the Midwest, and we thought about maybe Minnesota is a chapter to take. And so it was a bit of an experiment. And 8 years later, I think we've really been happy with the decision. It's a wonderful state. All of its exceptionalisms are there. All of its paradoxes are there. We all know that. But it is a pretty special place to be, even in times of crisis, to see the way this community comes together. That's not true everywhere.
Well, you're a journalist, so it seems to me silly to ask this question, but why did you write this book?
When we moved here, my wife and I and our twins, they were 1.5, and I was still with Google. And then I left Google to join state government. And that was based on, I think, a desire to really do something that was based in Minnesota. Google did not have an office here. I led a global team so I could work remotely. But that journey of going from tech into government is not as well-worn as a path as I think it should be. I think more people should leave tech companies and go into government, even just for stints like I did. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I was hired to be the jobs commissioner to grow the economy, to help attract entrepreneurship and growth and investment, but then really spent most of my time in government as kind of the pandemic mitigation person. You may remember those press conferences every day at 2 p.m. where the governor and Jem Malcolm and myself and then the others were just trying to figure this out alongside the rest of the state. And so I guess that experience of going from what was a generally comfortable life during the utopic era of technology in Silicon Valley, where everything just seemed like upside, what could possibly go wrong with these new platforms, to working in state government in the midst of a crisis and the grittiness of that, and just what you learn by virtue of being in those experiences. Felt like maybe there's a story here. And then I think there's a boomerang thing that I think is true for so many Minnesotans of kind of why you come back. And so I thought maybe there's a story to tell. And the title of the book, How I Found Myself in the West, is, of course, I guess how I found myself back here, but also how I went through a personal journey of finding myself here. So it's a vulnerable book, too, which I think, if you're going to take the time to write a book, you might as well lay out there, all the good and the bad and the challenges of your experience. And it was a joy to get to write?
I've said many times that COVID really took my life in a different direction. I thought I ran a traditional bricks and mortar business, even though that was silly because none of our coaches actually come to our office or all over the country. I didn't really realize it was a virtual business until COVID. And I remember I was sitting at a stoplight. I was driving my wife's car, and she always listens to WCCO. I never listen to WCCO. And you were on the radio with the governor talking about essential workers.
Yeah.
And I went down the list and said, hey, I'm an essential worker. I didn't really even think about it that way. And so then I started going back to the office, and it was a fascinating moment, and it really changed my life about how I think about that. Now I live and work out of Arizona in the wintertime. Yes, I'm flying back there this afternoon. But it really did change my life, and it was that whole experience about how it was communicated by you and the governor that really changed how I thought about it. So so it was a little bit of a half-truth. I knew about you a little bit.
That term essential worker, may it rest in peace.
Yeah, I know it.
Who is not an essential worker?
Yeah.
But you're trying to make these decisions that are impossible about what you're going to close and open. And I will say this, I think when you're in those situations in a crisis, and you all face them in your businesses too, the best you can do is just be super honest and tell the truth about what you know and what you don't know. And I give credit to the governor and Jan Malcolm in particular for this. And I learned by following their leadership of just getting up every day, never stop talking, tell people what you know and don't. And, when it comes to things like who's going to go back to work and who isn't, we were able to shift our approach pretty fluidly. And those are based on a lot of thoughtful conversations internally. I write about that in the book of kind of the internal struggles and the grist of a bureaucracy trying to figure out how you land in this moment. And then kind of the public side of that is being as transparent and open as you can. And I probably did 300 meetings with different business groups over about a year. We went back and counted them up just to get some feedback and understand what's happening. And, we didn't get it perfect, but we learned a lot. And, I think we all can agree at the end of it. Everyone's an essential worker. Let's just find a way to get back to work and rebuild the economy again. So,
I want to ask one more question about the book. If you decide to read it, you'll learn it starts in Eveleth, Minnesota, and the very last thing is your trip from Baghdad back to Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's a lot in between there.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about what's in between those things?
Well, the book starts out, in Eveleth, meeting with about 30 or so really unhappy business owners who didn't love our pandemic mitigation efforts, and we were out in the field just talking, trying to learn from these business owners, and it was a really powerful experience for me just getting to hear the impact of the pandemic and also to try to take that feedback back to St. Paul. I guess it ends by a reflection back on how I met my wife, which was in Baghdad, Iraq. We were both at Google. She was leading a business development trip to Baghdad to help build the Iraqi domain of Google, the unique language domain for that market. And I was the YouTube guy who came along to get more YouTube content onto the platform. So we met there, and that was kind of the beginning of our story together. But, one of the themes of the book, to your point on sort of local versus global, you work at Google or YouTube in these platforms, and many of you work for global companies in the room. There's some power in that, right? I mean, you change a pixel in YouTube's interface and the whole world notices it. I remember when YouTube first created the video uploader on a mobile phone, engineers noticed 3 days later that about 20% of the videos were coming in upside down because back then nobody did vertical video. You tilted your phone to one side, and 20% of people were left-handed, so they tilted their phone like this, and none of the engineers were left-handed, so they forgot to account for that, reality, so they had to quickly fix it. And so there's power in the global platform.
Yeah.
But what I have found coming back to Minnesota, and hopefully you all find too, maybe it's part of why you're here today, is that some of the greatest impact you can have in reality is at the local level. And when you look at where our country is today, with the declining trust in institutions across government, military, religion, media, trust is a major challenge our society faces today. I would argue we're not going to rebuild that at a global level. We're not even going to rebuild that at a national level. You have to start in a local, proximate context. The trust is higher to begin with. The impact is really greater. It's right in front of you. And for me, now working at a local news organization, I feel that every day. I mean, if we're going to reinvent journalism at a time we really need to, I don't think it's going to happen at a national level. It has to happen with a local community that really cares about its news organizations, really cares about its government institutions, really cares about its churches, because we have to reimagine so many of the institutions that hold us together right now. And I think, I'm just a big fan of going local to do that.
Yeah.
I love working at Google, love working in a global environment, and but I would say I've had much more meaningful experiences since moving back here than I ever did in tech.
Well, I want to ask you about this. So my grandfather was a newspaper man. He ran, this is kind of funny. He owned the newspaper and the funeral home in the same town.
His obits business must have been great.
Yeah, you know what? And as a kid, I spent my summers there. It was called Lakeview, Iowa. And, I learned that business. I folded newspapers. I watched him, type in. He wrote every story. He typed in on the line of type, and the type would fall out of the sky into the place like that. It was amazing. And to this day, I'm a subscriber. I still get the Star Tribune delivered to my door. Yep. I love the smell of that thing. Even
How many subscribers in the room of digital or paper? There we go. All right, good to see some hands raised.
Yeah, we're going to try to double that today.
There we go.
But this morning in my preparation, I thought about my grandfather.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Gramps, I'm going to interview the CEO and publisher of the Minnesota Star Tribune. And I think he asked me, is that thing going to survive?
Is that your question for me? If everyone here
what's
today
the future?
goes to startune.com and subscribes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that the honest truth, and I don't want to sort of try to gloss over it or be doomsday. I'm very optimistic about our future. But we have lost in this country in the last 20 years 75% of the journalists who work in local news. The Neiman Lab came out last week with a poll. Actually, the Pew Research Center came out with this poll. Neiman wrote about it. That 92% of Americans don't think they should have to pay for news. 92%. So we have rapidly shifted towards this environment where we think news should just find us. Shadi was talking earlier about not checking Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and he's probably, first of all, I admire that. Second of all, that's probably rare, right? Most people do check those platforms. Well, that's how I get my news. It'll find me in these streams and I'll consume it. Now, I worked at those platforms, and I'm not anti-platform. But I do think the broader trends here are stunning. And then there's the economics of just the business itself. I mean, the advertising market got gobbled up by Google and Meta and others, which that's capitalism, that's how this goes. And then print as a medium is going away. We lose about 20% of our print subscribers year over year, and that's pretty standard for most newspapers. So we're trying to pull off a digital transformation. I am very optimistic. If there's ever a community or a place in the country where you're going to see local news reinvented, why not Minnesota? Why not the state with the highest voter participation, the highest rates of volunteerism, the highest donations to charity? We have a whole holiday called Give Amen where we all gather together. It's like the Super Bowl for giving in Minnesota. So I think there is a charitable population here. But you can't look at the news ecosystem today and the headwinds that exist and say, oh yeah, for sure news will exist forever and be in great shape. I mean, the Washington Post laid off 300 journalists 2 weeks ago. So we face those same headwinds. I think our chances are as good as anybody. We have a great team, an owner who believes in us. I think we are humming towards a very digital future. We've had 35 straight weeks of digital subscription growth. We're trying all these new business models to pull in revenue. So I like our chances. But I don't think any honest person could answer your question and say, oh yeah, for sure, news has a great future. It could all survive. It's going to depend on new models to fund it. If news is a public service, just like plumbing or broadband internet or healthcare, we have to treat it like a public service and find ways to fund it that aren't just subscriptions. Because if 92% of the people in the country think that they shouldn't have to pay for news, whereas in the olden days, a green bag at the Star Tribune on your doorstep was just a sign of civic engagement, everybody had it, then we're not going to be able to fund it at the rate that we need it.
So I mentioned earlier that when I asked you to speak here, Minnesota was in a very different place. And right about the new year, it seems like all hell broke loose. So I want to ask you on behalf of our audience, what do you see? What did you experience? I mean, you have a very personal story, which I'm hoping you'll get into. What do you make of this?
Well, the book I wrote is an optimistic book about Minnesota. It doesn't pull any punches. It goes deeply into our paradoxes and the challenges that we face. But it is, I think, if you read it, largely a book that lifts up the Midwest as a place worth watching, and Minnesota uniquely as a place worth being. And I still believe that. And in some ways, the reaction the state has had to the last few months has been an inspiring reminder of who we are as a people. But it's been hellacious out there. There's no other way to put it. I mean, our reporters have been out in the streets every day. We've had, 50 reporters at least covering the activities across the state in this one issue for 2.5 months. I'm very proud of that. I would say this crisis has been the most documented crisis in American history, and not just because of the Star Tribune and many other great local news organizations, and not just because of the national media storm here, but largely the bystanders who filmed this every day, right? And those videos we saw of the 2 murders in the streets of our cities, and countless other altercations. 57-year-old Hmong man pulled from his house in boxers and Crocs, and taken to the car in the freezing cold weather, only to be found out later it was the wrong person. Little Liam being kidnapped and sent to Texas, only to find his way back here by a judge's injunction a week and a half later after intense national pressure. This isn't goodness. Hard to say that's goodness, no matter what you view on immigration, right? It just, those incidents were captured by people in the streets trying to understand what was taking place. Our journalists' jobs changed pretty quickly from not just being in the streets themselves, but also curating this content, trying to decipher it, understand what it meant, bringing the context around it that you desperately need in these situations so the truth can prevail. So I guess what I make of this moment is it's been a tragic few months in our state. There's no other way to put it. I think it's been a rallying cry moment for local news and just the importance of having accurate information of what is actually happening in a place. I'm incredibly proud of our newsroom. For us, you know, we're kind of built for these moments as an organization, and there are many communities in this country where if this had happened, the best place to get news about it would have been a Facebook group. You know, but here in Minnesota, we have not just the Star Tribune, but many local news organizations who swarm to cover it. So I think this moment has reminded our state, not just as it relates to, you know, the news reaction, of course, which is my business, but from activism to corporate engagement to philanthropy to, you know, to the pressure that was placed on everyone here to try to get to a better place with it. It's reminded Minnesotans of who we are, and I think it's given the country a bit of a playbook on how to handle these moments. But it's been tragic. It's been hard. There's no saying this has been an easy time, and I worry a lot about our economy right now. You look at, you know, the number of businesses have had to shut down. You look at the huge dive into restaurant and entertainment industries in particular. The best thing we can do right now is just get out in our community and spend a little money. Go to immigrant businesses, go to any business and just engage again, because there's just been kind of a chilling effect. And so I'm optimistic about Minnesota's future. I think this moment reminded us a bit of our identity and who we are. But it's been hard. And I think it's going to take a lot of very deliberate, proactive action by leaders to move us into this next chapter.
So that was the answer to my question up here. You became part of the story.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so if you don't know, the dark web identified him as the shooter in the first murder. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a tiny chapter in a much more important, broader story, but a good reminder of the environment we face right now in media. So when the ICE agent shot Rene Good and video was captured and spread around the web, you could close it on his face and you could see kind of the eyes of the person, but there was sort of a mask right here. And so some online vigilantes who wanted to figure out who this person was uploaded that image to Grok, which, if you don't know, is the AI functionality within the platform X that Elon Musk owns. And they have a very controversial new feature they just launched recently called Unmask Me or Undress Me. And essentially, you can upload an image of a person or thing and say, hey, take the mask off and show me what's underneath. Or in even more nefarious cases, perhaps, you know, undress this person or redress them. I do not know why this tool exists. It should not exist. It is completely irresponsible for X to have this tool. But essentially, they unmasked the agent, and then the AI made up a version of what that face might look like. The AI sort of guessed at the face. And then that person, these online vigilantes who did this, did reverse image search on that face and found out that, oh, this must be Steve Grove of Missouri, this guy who owns a gun shop there, and bears a slight resemblance to Jonathan Ross, who was actually the ICE agent who killed Rene Good. We found that out, our journalists, about 24 hours later through just good old-fashioned shoe leather reporting.
Yeah.
But that was far too late compared to these online vigilantes who suddenly started spreading a rumor that went viral very quickly that Steve Grove of Minneapolis, Minnesota was the shooter of Rene Good. And so it was a ridiculous few days where people kind of glommed onto that, tens of thousands of posts on this across many different platforms claiming that I was the shooter. No bearing in reality at all, but kind of a juicy story if it's like, the publisher of the strip was. And so, you know, for us, it's just a reminder that the truth spreads far slower than, you know, engaging viral content. And I guess just a warning sign to all of us of what we face. And back to your question of will the strip survive? I think it will. Like, local journalism faces this kind of a headwind right now. And it's why maybe getting off of these platforms isn't the worst idea.
Yeah, and so it is having us a little bit of a rebound effect for the Star Tribune. You've got visibility that just never existed before. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, it's been inspiring for the team just to see that people care about local news. We've seen subscriptions double over the last month. We've had donations from 45 different countries and Puerto Rico.
That's
so people
amazing.
are paying attention, and they see this moment for local news and want to contribute to it. I don't think, by the way, that America woke up one day and said, oh, we don't really care about the truth anymore. We don't care about journalism anymore. Of course people want to know the truth. Young, old, doesn't matter who you are. People want to know what happened. But we've created this ecosystem where it's harder to find. So I think this was a moment that people remembered local news, remembered why it mattered. We leaned into that, as a news organization should, and gave people the opportunity to donate. We made a lot of our content free, so the live blog of sort of all the Ice Raid content was free. Believe it or not, and this is kind of a nice reminder of people's appreciation, I guess, for good news, that we got more subscriptions off of the live blog page than any other page, even though the live blog itself was free. So people were reading this free information like, I should subscribe, versus hitting a paywall and being like, fine, I'll subscribe. So it just shows, sometimes when you give something away and give people an opportunity, they're like, oh yeah, I will subscribe to this. So yeah, it's been heartening to see that. And I think it's reminded us all that, accurate local information matters. And I'll tell you, it doesn't just matter because it's nice to know. Survey data will show you that when you have a dense network of local reporters in a community, you see higher voter participation, you see more donations to charity, you see less polarization. And so there's a direct connection to just knowing the basic facts of what's happening in your community and then how you engage in that community. So I would say local news is not just there because it's nice to know what's happening. It's a democracy enhancer, and it always has been. And I think we have to remember that. And these moments, like our country has gone through and our state has gone through the last few months, are great reminders.
You're a CEO, I'm a CEO, there's some in the room. I talk to them all the time. What do you think we as enterprise leaders need to take away from this?
This crisis? Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important to be honest with your people, to engage directly, to not hide from these issues, to talk about them. We at the Strib have an internal motto called Swift, Clear, and Brave. We try and do something really hard right now, and I think the swift part of it is you got to move fast and operate with urgency. You don't get to choose that. That's just the market we live in. The clear part is you got to keep talking. And I think for us, we hold regular town halls. I send a note out every Friday morning. We try to over-communicate. I think you kind of can't over-communicate in these moments. Even beyond the crisis of the last few months, it's a challenging time in American life, and I think you have to be proactive. And then brave is obvious. I think everyone in this room, I'm sure, is acting in brave ways when you have the opportunity and thinking about that theme. I think for us, we have to try some things we've never tried before. And I'd say for reporters out in the streets in these last few months in particular, just unimaginable bravery. I mean, we're going through all kinds of new training and refresh training on crisis situations and what to do if you get maced, and we've ordered all new security equipment. I mean, and we're just one of the many frontline institutions in this moment. So, yeah, I know those are some reflections. I think for anybody in these moments, it's important to keep talking, not be afraid to say the wrong thing. It doesn't have to be political, right? These situations are about how you absorb something as an organization. But I think being okay with uncomfortable conversations is something that I've thought a lot about lately. It's just, you might not always know the right thing to say. It might not be perfect. I write about this in the book, too, as it relates to George Floyd's murder and the racial tension coming out of that. And here I am, a white guy leading an organization that's designed to hopefully empower the economy across racial and demographic lines. If you shy away from that or think you're going to say the wrong thing, you don't get very far. So as leaders, you got to be okay with a little discomfort.
Our friend JC has found somebody in the audience who has a question for you.
Jacob Esser, right down front here, has a question for you, Steve.
Thanks, JC. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I think I can just say this on behalf of everyone here. Steve, you are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously.
That's nice. That's too nice.
Thank you for your work, and Paul, wonderful job up there. Journalism major, also had a few unpaid internships with some news outlets.
There you go.
Really appreciated hearing your story and your backstory, so thanks for sharing that. My question was around misinformation, and I feel like y'all did a wonderful job discussing that, breaking that down. I'm curious if you're willing to share any specific examples or personal examples even at that on how you are reinventing journalism, maybe within Star Tribune, if there's specific projects or initiatives that are kind of all under this umbrella of we're reinventing journalism, people. We got to start doing A, B, and C.
Yeah.
I would love to hear those.
Yeah, and I think we're all reinventing our businesses. I mean, really, that's the number one theme across all the work we're doing right now is people are rethinking how they do stuff. So how are you guys doing that?
It is a time of reinvention, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need it. We need it. Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of answers I could give to it. I'd say at a basic, fundamental level, we have to reinvent our core business model, which for a long time has been that we take news, we print on a piece of paper, we drive it around the community, we put it on your doorstep, and you pick it up and then you read it. And print is powerful. People have a connection to the print product. I once met a woman who told me, every morning I wake up, I take your paper off the front stoop, I put it in the microwave for 30 seconds so I can read a fresh, hot, piping newspaper every morning. That's pretty cool. We will still print the paper, but digital doesn't just mean turning that paper into a pixel. It means a whole different organizational structure and business model. So part of it is being a really strong digital subscriptions business model. And I won't go into the depths of that, but there's a lot of science and data and targeting and fascinating work we're doing there. And for that work, we brought in people who don't come from the news industry to figure that out. I'm a big believer in bringing fresh eyes into organization to solve problems sometimes. And in that case, we brought in a woman named Mary Mayer, who's a phenomenal growth chief for us, that's worked in startups and retail and also a little bit of news, but is bringing a new eye to it. No print experience at all, which is not what we need. So that's the core part of it. But if you just take a look at digital subscriptions and advertising as the kind of traditional stalwarts of funding journalism, it's not enough if you want to have the largest newsroom in the Midwest, which is what we have. So we've opened up a major philanthropic stream, and we're experimenting there and trying to grow that donation stream, which is new for us, but it's been really powerful, and we focus it very much on specific bespoke projects where there's a firewall between the money and the journalism, but we're able to fund more of it. Then we're leaning into cause marketing as another strategy to fund the journalism, which is very much focused on how we can tell the stories of corporate good in this market. It's called Minnesota Rising. It's this whole platform where our advertising team will write a story based on your work in the community and traffic that story across the web to tell stories that uplift us and not just investigate us, if you will, when it comes to the business community. And then a whole host of other new initiatives. One of the ones I'll just mention is Strib Varsity, our high school sports initiative. We've gone really deep into like hyper local coverage of high school sports. What could be more local, right? It's like your high school team. So that's been fun. But in terms of the journalism itself, which maybe is more of your question, I mean, look, we got to be everywhere. We got to be on video. We got to be on audio. We got to be on the platforms. We got to search for younger audiences. And that's upon us to figure out. I think too many times you'll talk to publishers who just kind of they complain or they are concerned about nobody reads the newspaper anymore, or nobody goes to traditional sites. Well, that's on us to figure out. Like, how do we find customers today? We're not a monopoly like we were 20 years ago, where you could just put that paper on the doorstep. You have to have an audience-first mentality. So I think going where the audience is and then delivering real value. If 92% of Americans don't think they should pay for news, what's going to change their minds? It's going to be providing value that you can't miss. And so how do we create a report? How do we create an initiative? How do we create events and other opportunities that you just can't miss and you're willing to pay for? And so that's the journey that we're on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that question. We've been asking this same question now for a little more than 10 years to our speakers. And that question is articulated around our point of view, and that is, how do you know for sure that goodness pays for you in your leadership?
I think you find out when goodness pays when crisis hits and how you and your team are able to react to it. And I think goodness also pays when you have a larger margin for error because you've built up some social capital. I'll give you an example of this from my previous job at Deed. When I was at Deed, in the throes of the pandemic, we were trying to get unemployment insurance out the door. And one thing we realized in the process is that there was a 1939 law in Minnesota's books that prohibited high school students from getting unemployment insurance. And at the time, I'm sure it kind of made sense. Oh, they're just working to get bubble gum and soda pop at the soda fountain or whatever it was back in the 30s, and why should high school kids get it if they get laid off? Now, employers still pay into the system for those high school kids, so it's not as if it was like extra money. They're actually a part of the system. But you fast forward to 2020, and many of the young people who were in high school who were laid off were immigrant kids who were supporting their entire family. Like, they were literally keeping the lights on in their homes. And so the law that was on the books prevented us from making those payments, yet high school students organized and sued the agency to say, hey, like, you should pay this money, right? And so we're getting sued. And our reading of the law very clearly was that we can't do this and we don't know how to navigate this going forward. So we got sued. We were in this adversarial position with the high school kids. But we spent a lot of time in the community with youth unemployment, with young groups. My wife and I had the nonprofit you mentioned earlier. And so I think hopefully we had built up as an agency a bit of social capital that gave us some credibility in this conversation. And what I told the students was please sue us. We want to be sued. Let's take this to court. Let's lose. And so we ended up losing. And so the payments were able to flow. And much longer story because we ended up actually changing that law, which is one of the most remarkable experiences I had in state government, seeing these young people change the state law. But I was pretty worried that our reputation of DEEB would go sour. We just got sued. Who are these curmudgeons not paying young people? And I went to an event with these young activists that was meant to kind of lift up this topic and also advocate to change the law permanently. And I was really nervous. We were able to walk up. I was like, are they just going to say, you're the jerk who... And I walked up and immediately they gave me a big hug and were like, hey, Commissioner, how are you? And I was like, oh, this is so amazing. I mean, you just sued us for not paying you, and we're standing here hugging. And I guess I hope part of the lesson for me there was even though we were in an adversarial position, I think we were fundamentally tried to be good about what we were doing and be engaged and be conversed. And so I think goodness paid off because we didn't, you could see in another situation, we'd be like the faceless bureaucrats who were getting hammered by these young people. But instead, it felt more collegial. And so I think goodness pays off when you build it up in the quiet times, and then you can cash in on it in the crises when things get hard because you've built a relationship.
Thank you so much. I feel like this is really rare air that we had today. We're really grateful
Thanks,
for
Paul.
your participation.
Thank you all.
Okay, so you're not done yet.
Oh, okay.
So here comes Julie. We have a couple things left that we've got to do. So, Julie?
Yeah. Well, before we draw our winner today, Steve, we have $1,000 from Good Leadership for you to donate to the charity of your choice as a thank you for being here
awesome.
today. So, do you want to tell us where that's going?
Oh, yeah, well, probably not surprisingly, the Minnesota Star Tribune Local News Fund, startribune.com/donate. But thank you. That's very nice.
Well, that's one new model you could look for.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited. This is a big number. We raised $2,680 this morning.
Wow, yeah.
So with the match, that puts us at $5,360.
Amazing.
So that's really cool.
Amazing.
So I'm going to have you draw a name, please.
Okay, wow. All right. Kendall Harrell.
Kendall, right there. Absolutely. Come on up here, man. So Kendall, when I told you we would see each other
Yeah.
at the February breakfast, I didn't know this was going to be what was going to happen. So congratulations. There you go.
Come here.
Crazy.
Okay, Paul doesn't even know this, but Kendall and I know each other from college.
Yeah, there you go.
We are Cyclones.
Yeah,
yes.
go Cyclones.
So,
Yep.
welcome, congrats. You have $5,360 to donate. Tell us where it's going and why.
My heart's pounding right now. This is crazy. So it's going to the Harold Foster Care Scholarship. So once I went to college, my mom always wanted a big family. And she couldn't have any more kids after me. Why would you anyway? But she got really involved in foster care. And since then, she and my father have fostered over 90 kids, all young women. And if you haven't been involved with foster care, teenage girls are the hardest to find homes for, and very difficult. Their experience is very, very tough. So I'll be quick, but my dad passed away 11 years ago. And after he passed, one of my foster sisters, Brittany Beard, she came to myself, my sister, and my mom and said that she feels called to do something in my dad's honor. And she didn't know what that was, but she drew on her own experience. And once these kids turn 18, they age out of the system. And they don't have any other support if they want to continue their education. And so she wanted to be able to provide some level of support for these kids that age out of the foster care system if they want to pursue secondary education. So since then, we've donated over $60,000. It's been insanely grassroots, and represented, supported by local PD, local high schools. This has been in Iowa. And it's just been a phenomenal journey for us. And they are going to lose their minds when they hear about this.
Awesome. Now you got 5,000. Excellent. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Absolutely.
All right, everybody. So as we wrap up the breakfast today, before we hand it back to Paul, I'll let you know who's had a good time today.
Yeah.
And again, good may mean like energizing or inspiring or thoughtful or challenging or life changing. So come back. As Steve said, right? Local energy. You are the most influential person to the people who are in your circle. There are people who need to be in this room who don't know about this room. There are people who need the strib who don't currently have the strib. There are people who need goodness in their life who currently don't have goodness. So ways that you can invite people to be in this room: April 10th, Ann Head Cycling will be our guest. May 15th, Andrea Walsh, Health Partners, will be our guest. Those are your next two opportunities to bring people into this room. And if you go, well, what do I do? Do I send them a link? Sure, send them a link, but even more so, be like, hey, put April 10th on your calendar. I'm taking you to breakfast. That's all you need to tell them. They'll be like, okay, I trust you. Please do that. We'll see you in April. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, JC. Rock star crowd today. Really, really grateful you're here. I've been thinking a lot about synonyms and ways to bring out goodness in darkness. And I think happiness is an incredibly important concept for leaders who believe in goodness. And I'm going to challenge each one of you. Think about your 7F's wheel today. Find out where in that experience that you're having that can be measured by 7 words that start with the letter F: faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. I believe you can find happiness in any of those, and I want you to think about where is that source of happiness for you. And here's why. We have a lot of coaching techniques around the 7Fs. We use it at all sorts of levels, and Steve and I were talking about this. I use the 7Fs wheel with my CEO coaching clients like every 60 days. That's called accountability. And there's sort of a poignant, in some ways smart aleck question that goes along with that 7Fs if you decide to be a leader. And that question is, if you don't have a 9 or a 10 on future, why would anybody follow you? Leaders don't exist to preserve the status quo. We should see ways that everything can be better, faster, and easier if we all work together. We call it goodness. Goodness is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, healthy accountability, and positive teamwork. So after today, I consider this to be one of the most special Good Leadership breakfasts we've done in 17 years. Rare air. If you're inspired by each other, by me, by our team, but mostly by Steve, I want you to put this concept of goodness in the front of your mind, and I'm just going to ask you the signature question now. Are you ready to radiate goodness after today? Yeah, I believe you, and I'll see you in April. Thank you very much.